right, it is 10:30 and a number of people jumped on here in the last few seconds, but we will go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me all right? Somebody give me a thumbs up. All right, wonderful. There's nothing worse than to be talking and realizing that absolutely nobody can hear you on these things. So, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We've had a little more than a month's hiatus since we've come together, of course, with colleges and schools getting started. August, I know, was a really busy time, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there with us and coming together now. Just a little bit of background before we get started. I want to share my screen and just focus our attention on our vision and goals. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen share now. Right, fabulous, thank you. Just remind everyone of those statements that we've developed that are guiding this work. Our vision: driving a robust economy with the highest educated and skilled workforce. And our mission: to align education and workforce training to cultivate future-focused and future-ready talent while using an entrepreneurial mindset. And then our goals, of course, being the best in the Midwest and beyond in post-secondary readiness and success, which is of particular importance to the Jumpstart work group. Preparation for high-wage, high-demand, high-skilled, and critical need occupations, business expansion, attraction, and retention. Also reminding us that all of this, we're looking for the outcome of transformational, future-focused, industry-aligned workforce education and training using an entrepreneurial mindset that results in prosperity through economic growth and community vitality. And then there's just a reminder when we talk about best in the Midwest, who those competitor peer states are. I just wanted to remind us of that, particularly since we have been apart for a number of weeks. Just giving you a bit of an update where we are with different things that we've had going on with AKCC. We have made the decision, in case you missed a meeting, that we are focusing all of this work toward the information technology sector. And the reason for that is as we align what we're doing with the Kansas Framework for Growth document that came out of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, not Chamber of Commerce, just out of Commerce, Trent Armbus Group, the Department of Commerce. So as we align with that document, we really wanted to start something small that would then be scalable to the other industries that have been shown that they would produce economic growth in our state. We felt that IT was a really good place to start because it is present in all of those target industries. Also, it would be something that it would be fairly easy for workers and students alike to find opportunities for field trips, internships, eventually apprenticeships, youth apprenticeships, since IT is basically the backbone of everything. We would be very hard pressed to find a community of any size that didn't have some IT needs in it. And so with that in mind, we're really focusing what we're talking about in our strategic plan in all of the work groups now on IT, again, with that idea being we will then scale what we've learned and be able to replicate that in other industries as we go forward. So questions or comments about that, because we really haven't had this many people together since we launched that concept with IT. So I'll pause for just a moment and take any questions or comments that folks may have out there. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone or seeing any hands waving, so I will trust that I've given sufficient wait time, and we will move on. Our goal today is really to begin to develop a clear and concrete action plan for Jumpstart toward the goals that really were laid out for us from the governor's office. And so as we begin to do that, I want to share my screen again and just remind you of those things that were in that original details document. Just give me a minute here to find it on my screen. Okay, I had it open a minute ago and now it doesn't seem to be here. Hold on. Okay, bear with me. I had this open so it would be ready to go, and it seems that it has closed. Maybe if I do that. All right, let's try that again. There we go. It was open. It just wasn't showing up for me to be able to share it for some reason. So looking at our details document that was shared with us, really that came through the Governor's Council on Education and then through the Governor's Office charging us to carry out this mission. Jumpstart has been given some tasks to work on. And so we want to start beginning to really flesh this out and put some action steps with it. Who's responsible? So we'll take a look at that in a minute. But just reminding us that our main tactics or strategies are focusing on the Kansas Complete Scholarship and other things that can help make that paid tuition, leverage that for our students, and work-based learning and applied learning. So especially thinking of those apprenticeships now with the Department of Commerce getting a $5 million grant to help really push those apprenticeships forward. Those are important to us. So looking at these goals of preparing more students with college credit, more work-based learning networks, providing that career-specific instruction through work-based learning, and increasing the number of industry-vetted internships and youth apprenticeships. Those are all goals that fall on Jumpstart Kansas to work on. Industry-recognized credentials through Excel and CTE, increasing the number of students that are completing a CTE course of study. So all of these are things that fit into our Jumpstart group. So any questions or comments about that? I think we've included a link to this document in the agenda. So hopefully some of you took a look at that today, or you can click on that and access it.
Shelley, this is Ksde. I do have a comment or a question. We did make the recommendation to change the 15,000 to 10,000 for an outcome, and I saw it still said 15 on here.
I will make, oh, there it is. So the Department of Commerce and the work that you're doing now, you've updated that number.
That was when we made the recommendations, that was what I spoke to Mike about, and we said we would recommend the 10,000 instead of the 15.
Okay, that is the first I have heard of that, Chastity. So this is still just the original document
Okay.
as it was given to me.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to check and kind of.
Yeah, I'll do some follow up on that because I heard something just the other day that Trent said, and I was pretty sure that he used the 15,000 number. So,
Okay.
Dr. Kiplinger, this is Natalie Clark.
Yes,
When we met with NGA, when they came to Kansas, Vijay had asked that we send him comments. And so we sent those August 5th, and Chastity's as well as some additional comments just for consideration were included. And I can send that on to you also.
yes, please, because I have not seen that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? That will be helpful as we go forward.
Shelley, I have a quick question and a quick comment. One, just a clarification, when you say IT, is this all areas of IT or is it focused within networking or security or a different branch of it? And then on the dual credit side, IT tends to be one of the most difficult areas that we find as a college and partnering with our high school partners for offering dual credit. So just kind of a comment as we're looking at that.
And first off, I agree with you that it is one of the more difficult things to partner with. And so part of our challenge is how might we make some changes to help, overcome those barriers, because certainly we see this as a critical need for our economy. As far as when we say IT, what do we mean? That is something we are trying to get some clarity from our Opportunity Ready group. But we're looking at those IT things that would drive the economy forward. So sometimes you'll see those things get included in IT, like maybe, we know how to use Microsoft Word and Excel. That's not really what we're talking about when we mean IT. So we're talking about programming, coding, network security, definitely some of these higher skills, actually working on the infrastructure, technology repair, things of that nature. So trying to get some clarity on that, but just so you know, we're not talking about things that would be, oh gee, I know how to run this piece of software. It would be more, can you program a piece of software? Can you wire the network together? Can you keep it safe? If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I am going to stop sharing that screen so that I can jump back in a bit and share a different one. Another thing I want to update you on, we are beginning to receive data back from the legislative data requests that we submitted. And hopefully when next we meet, we'll be able to share out all of the data so we know exactly where we are in the state of Kansas on these metrics that are of importance to us, and we can further refine our plan with knowing here's the benchmark of where we are, and adjust some goals appropriately based on that information. But I'd say we have approximately a third of that data request back from the various entities. So we are making progress there. I'm going to share my screen again and jump into, okay, now I'm having the same problem that I had before, which is, okay, I have to click on that tab, then share my screen. Okay, sorry about that. Apparently it only wants me to have one Google screen open at a time. I have to have clicked on it in the background in order to see it here, but I'm gonna figure out how to make that a little bigger. Can you all see that okay? Okay, I see some. And oh, there we go. I can blow it up maybe to 150. Is that even better?
Better.
All right. So we have begun to put together a strategic plan for our group. This is still very much in a draft form. One of the things that we feel we would like to do is add some additional narrative to it so that it makes more sense when we just hand it to someone and present it to them. So know that that is coming, that we would want to put some additional explanation in narrative form about what we're trying to accomplish. But this is kind of the skinny version, I guess you would say, of our strategic plan. And it starts out with just those important things that you would think: the vision, the desired outcome, the mission, the valued concepts. Really the same things we went over as we opened the meeting. Our goals: post-secondary readiness and success, preparation for high demand, high skilled, critical need occupations, business expansion, attraction, and retention. And so you can see we've color coded the sections here. Jumpstart is red. That's kind of been our color since the beginning. And then we have the talent ready is green, and the opportunity Kansas, the things that are in blue. Then moving on, which begins to be what will be our topics of discussion for today, but right now just kind of giving you the big picture view of this. Asking each of our work groups, Jumpstart, Talent Ready, Opportunity Kansas, to go through their section, which again, you can tell it's our section. When you click on this, and you should have access to view this document off of the agenda if you click on it. You can refer back to this. The red section is ours. The green section with that tab over the side, that's Talent Ready. And then Opportunity Kansas is the blue. And basically asking each section to go through, they've done quite a bit of work in Opportunity Kansas, so I'll use them as a model. You can see they have a goal: accelerate the talent pipeline in computer science and info tech. And then you can see some of their action steps here. They're going to explore Spark funding. They're going to align tiered funding resources, developing a marketing plan. So you can see they're starting to put their ideas for what actions will be necessary to bring that goal to fruition into this document, and beginning to find what people will be responsible, eventually getting like starting and ending dates of when do they want to start this work, when should this step be completed, what required resources might be necessary. You know, will that be a legislative ask? Is it something we'll try to obtain Spark funding for? Shifting resources around, you know, in another agency. Where would that come from? And then expected outcomes. They haven't begun to fill that in yet with the actual goal metrics, but that will be coming. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we are trying to accomplish. So if you get back up here to Jumpstart Kansas, which is our group, I have taken some of the things that we have been brainstorming and just gone ahead and added different things in here. But again, this is a draft. Just put them in there as a starting point for the conversation. And I thought we'd just decide which one of these we, you know, really want to tackle first. But we have two main things: capitalize on programs that provide free post-secondary credits for high school students was one of our overarching strategies. And then expanding work-based learning. I haven't really written that too well, but it was just expanding those work-based learning initiatives, and then begun to put, you know, okay, what really concrete action steps would we be able to do or help influence bringing about to make these things happen? Would we like to spend our time today talking about capitalizing on programs that provide free post-secondary credits for high school students? We know we've got a couple of programs in the work now. We do have, of course, the Excel and CTE Senate Bill 155 that's been going for a number of years, but certainly that can be leveraged more. And then, of course, we have the Promise Scholarship that has recently been created, providing basically $10 million worth of free college tuition for qualifying students. And lots of work been taking place with work-based learning. I know that recently the State Department of Education, they have met and been hard at work on that, moving things ahead there as well. Thoughts from the group on where we'd like to focus our time today?
Well, one thing to add on the capitalization section, I think it's important to put data analytics somewhere in there so we don't lose sight of it, because I think that's, my opinion, that's going to be the most timely component to try to introduce into secondary school system related to IT. Plus, it also hits on math competencies and abilities. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of data analytics.
Also in that section on capitalization. So right now for Excel and CTE, Senate Bill 155, there's essentially one computer science pathway, computer support specialist. However, there are computer science courses which may line up into another certificate or credential. So, you know, something like robotics that may not be in computer support specialist pathway, but that would be, you know, considered computer science in the broadest sense. And to the question about what is computer science, I think the Opportunity Kansas group is not looking at the Ksde definition of computer science, but computer science of what business and industry thinks is computer science. So I wonder if one of a concrete step could be to have KBOR pull from the Excel and CTE course list. And by pull, I mean, you know, do a data pull. What courses? So we obviously have computer support specialist and the courses that roll up under that would be IT related, but what other IT related courses might sit in like a robotics or manufacturing pathway that would be considered computer science, so that K-12 could know the extent of the classes, even if they don't take the computer support specialist pathway. We don't have that list. I've never seen it. And it would certainly vary by institution, but to me, that's the first step, is what courses do we have that align in Excel and CTE with computer science?
Okay, so what courses, great suggestion. What courses do we have, I should say, do we offer?
In addition to computer support specialists that would be considered, you know, a computer science course. So to Jim's point, data analytics may or may not be on that computer support specialist pathway, but that's something that we would like to be exploring and trying to push. But there are others that would be on a list that we need to get in addition to computer support specialists.
And if you really want to get scary and revolutionary,
Let's do it.
this whole thing with, especially on the computer science side, I think opens up the potential of some collaboration between the universities and the two-year colleges to the secondary schools that's been missing all along. We got to get over this us versus them. This is one of these where we make it a win-win for everybody.
Do you have a suggestion on how to word that?
Promote collaboration of universities with two-year colleges and secondary schools to enhance computer science options.
Which gets at what Preston perhaps was mentioning about how difficult it is for the dual credit.
Yeah.
Is that in that vein?
K-State, I've had folks at K-State, they're working with us. We're trying to come up with a plan, but the current, and I'm not being diplomatic at all today, sorry. The current structure of a lot of things in higher ed get in the way of being innovative and practical.
Jim, I appreciate what you're sharing there. Dr. Kiblinger, I'll jump in. Jim mentioned the data analytics, and that is a skill set, an area that's identified in the framework for growth. From an industry perspective, we look at provide free post-secondary credits. This is a new area as far as professional development for teachers, both secondary and post-secondary, is the data analytics introduction through NC3. And with that, it does not matter how many students are being certified. Once a teacher's had the training, they can certify 10 students, 50 students, all of those certifications are free. So that is an area of being able to start creating more career awareness and exploration for students across all industries.
Dan, you used the word free post-secondary credits. Would credentials be the right word there instead of credits?
The credentials, to me, credits align more with going back to semester-long classes. And for a lot of industry certifications, they aren't based on a semester long. It's focused on students developing a certain competency and then demonstrating that they met that competency. So from a market value assets, when we've been discussing Diploma Plus, the certifications are credentials.
Shelley, to that point, would it be advisable that that strategy include credentials in addition to credits?
That's
And I don't know
was
if it's
kind of
listed somewhere
the
else.
nature of my question.
I would argue, yes, it should. And in fact, this might be a place where this work group's work intersects other work groups' work. And back to Jim's comment, not every computer science job needs an associate's degree. Not every computer science job needs a baccalaureate degree. And we need to be exiting credentials at the point that industry will hire the person.
Right.
This is Natalie Clark. I wonder, and I think it's reiterating what the group has said, but when we think of secondary, we think of pathway and post-secondary program, the pathway to program alignment that might, and if we could identify those occupations that Department of Labor references as high demand, high wage when we review our pathways. And then also mention the workforce report. But kind of to what Heather is saying, I think that would identify the pathways and those occupations. And as we build what post-secondary credits and or IRCs might be available.
So identify careers that are high demand, high wage with the Department of Labor, with the purpose of then building those pathways, identifying IRCs.
Yes, so when we review our pathways, we ask for the Department of Labor to come in and make a presentation. And I sent out, oh, Shelley, you and I had a conversation. I used marketing, for example. We need to show that there are occupations that are in demand that we train our students for. So, and as to Jim's point, our pathway to program alignment and what post-secondary credits and or IRCs that are available. Delaware has a really good model of that, showing if you're going from pathway to program alignment. They even include work-based learning experiences.
So Natalie, you and I had talked about this earlier, and I said, I think this is something that we need to do. And I said, let's kind of pause until we get the rest of the group on board. It seems like that would be a really important first step now that would help us with quite a few of these other things. Does everyone agree? Natalie, is that something then that we could put you down as the responsible person, that you could start that request and get them to come in and give us
Yes,
that information?
I can reach out to the Department of Labor. And what's your time frame? When would you like to have a presentation if possible?
Do you think that they would be able to get that together by October the 11th when we meet again, or is that too soon?
I will ask.
Our next date would be November the 22nd. So if you could give them those two dates, I'm going to go ahead and put October 11th in here, or November 22nd, just so we know that it's in the works, and then you can let me know what they say that they would be able to do there. So I think once we have that information, that would be really helpful. And it's also going to help us with we can probably take that information and then pass it along to the Opportunity Kansas group to say, okay, so here's what Department of Labor has said. So this is what, we're thinking, this means. Do you see, anything there that, they disagree with or see differently from that perspective? But that would really help us be able to get the ball rolling, and then see if we have additional pathways that we need to build, identifying what badges, certificates, credentials, may be out there, particularly that can be accessed by juniors and seniors in high school.
Shelley?
Yeah.
The IT cluster is actually also up for review this year, I believe. So that probably good to connect the dots, because as Natalie says, at the secondary level, we need the pathways to, is really how we operate. So we need that to have representation on that or something like that.
Yes, and Nick Nelson is the consultant for that pathway. So the information that we'd be requesting for this presentation, he'll also be requesting for his cluster review.
And should I be calling that IT pathway or IT cluster? Natalie and Chris, help me with the terminology, so I'm using the right language.
It's information technology cluster review, which would be all the pathways that are currently you're talking about: web and digital, programming and software development. I can't think of them all right now. It's a couple more.
Chris and Natalie, I know you're both very familiar then with the timeline on this. So when does that review start? When is it scheduled to be completed?
I expect that it would start in October, and the goal is to have the information out for public comment no later than February 1st.
our timing on this then is very, very good. What is the, I guess, you know, we have you on here, so you can be that conduit to make sure that that review team knows of our work and the direction we're trying to move in.
Yes, and after this meeting, I can update. Stacy would oversee that cluster review and Nick Nelson would be the consultant facilitating that.
So would that be the appropriate place where this concept of expanding pathways, making sure that robotics and all of that is included?
I think
that-
it's two separate things. Natalie, you talk about the K-12 side, but on the higher ed side, that all goes through the Technical Education Authority. And Stacy sits on the Technical Education Authority too, so that's a nice carryover, but I think it's two separate things.
That would mean that there's, I guess for lack of a better word, there's another cluster that really doesn't exist at the K-12 level right now that really more robotics and things would fall under. I know there are some robotics classes that are funded, but I'm not sure.
I think that they would be under the manufacturing pathway probably, but mapping back what the courses are and what pathway they fall under would probably be a good exercise.
So knowing that the IT cluster is up for review, are there particular things that we would feel need to be looked at or that would be helpful? Is there any input, Chris or Natalie, that we can give you to send back to Stacy that you think would be helpful?
And I just put in the chat bar the Kansas Career Cluster Guidance Handbook, and it has the pathways and the design sheets. I know talking about robotics, and of course there's manufacturing and there's also engineering. But I will touch base with Stacy. Traditionally, there's requests from the field to have secondary, post-secondary, and business and industry on each of the cluster review teams. So they review those clusters, the pathways beneath those, and the courses and competencies taught within that. So I did put, for next year, it'd be the 2022-2023 cluster handbook, so you can see the pathways and the courses that fall underneath those.
So Chris or Natalie, we should look at manufacturing because we'd find some robotics and things like that there. What other pathways would you encourage the group to take a look at?
I would think engineering. Like I said, I'm not the consultant for these areas, but yes, I think that they would overlap. And thinking about data analytics, we looked at that in our marketing review. So there was some talk about data analytics and IT skills and how they're transferable across clusters or pathways. So I think that might be in addition to these specific technical skills that are within pathways.
I know that the data analytics is something that we've had, as you said, that conversation, that it's really a cross-sector skill. which makes it very valuable, and we should find a way to be promoting that.
I'll also put the visual image of the clusters and pathway in the chat, so you can look at that. And then more detailed would be the cluster guidance handbook.
Something else that I see that I think ties in with this, once we identify these careers that are high demand, high wage, and then as we start to identify those industry recognized credentials, would be this up here: develop and promote a list of badges, certificates, credentials, degrees that are available to high school students, and the occupations that those are going to open up. So I think some of that may come from the information that you receive, Natalie. But I know I'm definitely learning that we don't seem to have great agreement. What are those badges and certificates and credentials that at the K-12 level that we're going to recognize and promote? I mean, there's a list. I'm not sure it's, you know, everything that could be on there, should be on there. Would it be beneficial to spend some time looking at what is currently recognized as post-secondary success at K-12, and therefore, you know, I'm going to say promoted, to make sure that it's as extensive of a list as we want. I know there are some of the CompTIA certs on there, none of the NC3 certs. There are probably others that we're just not aware of. What's the group thinking on those sorts of things?
Well, one of the things, especially from Opportunity Kansas meetings, is to make sure we get the business engagement so that what we're providing to the students addresses those needs. And with many of these things in IT, like you mentioned, it is cross-cutting. So that's one of the things the other groups have been struggling with, is how do we get the right engagement from the right companies? We do know in some of it, you know, CompTIA, Cisco, the new data analytics credentials should answer the basics. So I think it's important with our work that we're looking at being realistic. We're looking at entry-level skills. We're not looking at going too far with these students at this time. It's entry-level skills, but it affects the overall workforce for the state related to IT.
I think this also could tie closely into the work-based learning section in terms of like cybersecurity. It's a pretty quick to complete certification, and you could get an entry-level cybersecurity job. But if you're going to get a real cybersecurity job, you've got to have that work-based experience. So that might be the other thing in terms of marketing. Opportunity Kansas has been talking about a marketing plan, making sure that what we're marketing, everyone is realistic about this credential is going to get you in the door. But then before you get maybe a good paying job, you've got to have, you know, 2 years of work experience or whatever else you have to have. I think that's important for families and students to not have expectations that aren't going to be what the industry is really doing.
I want to echo what James said too. In talking to employers in this area, a lot of the credentials that are on the state approved list that was just sent out, they don't recognize. And so I think we do need to get that engagement to make sure that there's meaning in those credentials.
I like that.
And I don't know who's on here from KBOR, but I believe that that post-secondary list was, that I put in the chat, was agreed upon by KBOR and KSDE, looking at labor, but
Yeah, this is Daniel Archer at KBOR. I think I assume the TA probably would have been involved in that with that being more technical, but I can check and follow up. But my office wasn't involved in that particular element.
Beth Holtz
I
leads
think
the
that's the
post-secondary.
TEA list at it.
Sure. And secondary, Beth Holtz is lead of assessments at KSDE. So she is the one that we ask if we have any questions about that particular list.
That's really, really helpful to know, Dr. Dennis, that in your area up there, around Kansas City, I would certainly think that that says a lot if you are not hearing that business and industry is really finding value in that list. So if we could take that list, pick those IT things off of it, I would think that would be a fairly small list that we could start with to make sure that we're getting that we could get some feedback from business and industry on, yes, this is valuable. No, this is not. This is what would be instead.
Dr. Kiblinger, this is an area where I have visited with you as far as the NC3 certification. The list is superintendents as they look at offerings and what they can do to integrate some of this in their schools. Or excuse me, KBOR has the state agreement with NC3. NC3 certifications aren't on the list. So I do think it would be helpful to have that discussion from a secondary and post-secondary setting together.
Yeah, what he said, definitely.
I think I lost everything said toward the end.
Not only looking at those things that are on the KSDE list, but what things aren't on that perhaps should be.
Dr. Kimblinger, this is Natalie Clark. And I know that the Kauffman Real World Learning Initiative have taken the KSDE list and talked to business and industry in that region. And so you might check with them as far as the work that they have done in determining what their market value asset definition is in regards to IRCs.
Can you speak to that? I know you're on here.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, I was just searching for that while I was listening to the conversation, and I was unable to find it, but I'll look into that resource and see what kind of connectivity we might find. I do want to say in general, I think, and this has been great conversation and the list is ever expanding as Shelley types in.
Yes, I'm adding your name.
I see that. I better be quiet. But I think we want to just make sure, just a sort of a refocusing note, not to lose the forest for the trees. If we recognize and delineate what industry needs now, go back to the mission and vision of this work group, right? And what specifically industry needs now in this particular area of focus, and backwards map how we can get there. What we're going to find out is, I believe anyways, is that there'll be pockets of successes across the state in different areas, depending on the industries in those areas, depending on the programs that individual school districts offer to meet those needs. And if we can create a catalog, if you will, of those important areas, and then how to help schools achieve credentialing students and accrediting students in those areas, of the highest need, I think that we can really make some progress. A lot of it's about, and I'll just say this, what we're just now learning in the real world learning realm is that collaboration between school districts really heightens progress towards that achieved goal of attaining market value assets. And I feel like this is very similar. I feel like that same thing will happen here. But it's drawing attention to where are those high needs areas. We need students to be trained. We need to be trained in an efficient way, credentialed in an efficient way, and we need them to move into fill those open seats in high needs, high wage positions. And sometimes those high need positions are not yet high wage, but they're entry level. And I think Jim said that earlier. But then they move into a higher wage, a living wage, if you will. So anyways, that's food for thought.
I really like your thoughts on that, Bill. The idea of the catalog, I believe you called it, okay, this is interesting. It says I'm signed out. All right. The idea of the catalog, as you call it, I really like, and how we can make it very plain to students, kind of what that career ladder is. Here's your first step, and then you do these things, and now I'm envisioning kind of this table or chart in my head that would clearly show you start here, here's your entry wage, here are the types of jobs that you'll be able to do at that entry level. Here's the next step. Here's where this career ladder can take you, and here's where you go, that you can obtain these entry level certifications for that high school guidance counselor. Here are the places that you'll be able to reach out to, so that you can get your students access to these kinds of things. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're thinking, Bill?
It is, and it's with the goal of starting organically, if you will, or at where the rubber meets the road, where the jobs are. And this is something I think Jim alluded to earlier, as opposed to starting at the university and community college level with the courses that are offered and funneling kids into those courses. But perhaps if you do that, there aren't actually any real jobs tied to it, or the pathway to get there is long and arduous. And that's not what we're about, right? We're about finding the most efficient mechanisms to go there. And so you start with the jobs that are out there, and then the skills required for those jobs, the credentials to acquire those skills, and then you line up the universities, community colleges, and high schools to fit where they best can to offer those credentials for students.
Thank you, Bill. Other thoughts or comments?
Dr. Kiplinger, I want to make sure, I don't know how we put this in there, but all students leading into these pathways, there still needs to be a concerted effort at the middle school and lower grade levels to get that population, once they get to high school, interested in IT. And we still don't see that. I don't think. We need more girls. We need, we just don't see the enrollment like we need to. I mean, we can offer credentials as much as we want, but we still need to have kids enroll in those classes. So I don't know what you put or how you put it, but there still needs to be a big effort in teaching the basic skills as well. That's kind of a side subject, but the kids these days are used to just pointing on apps on their phone and doing everything. And we still need to make sure we're hitting on the basic skills. If you mentioned Office or whatever it might be, Microsoft Office and a spreadsheet or a database and all those good things. they're completely missing that right now in a lot of areas. And we don't want to bypass that because the database runs everything. And I don't know how, I'm kind of going off on a whim here, but concerted effort on the lower grades, middle school, lower high school grades to get kids interested in IT. And definitely concerted effort on not leaving behind the basics of what we all grew up learning in IT. Hope that makes sense.
No, I agree with what you're saying, Chris. And I think when we're talking about IT now, you are right. And I didn't mean to say spreadsheets aren't important anymore or basics of word processing aren't important anymore. But they are some of those very foundational skills that are part of it, along with math, basic coding, those things that can certainly be introduced in the lower grade levels. So yes, absolutely. I think that comes back up here to really here where we said we talk about the pathways and how do you promote those in educational materials, but you're right. How do we go lower? And that's part of the work-based learning initiative. That's why I'm not fighting it. It's down here. Develop a sequence of experiences to expose students to those IT careers. Like I knew it was in here somewhere. So it's down in the WBL, but we can't forget about it because it absolutely ties in with this piece. How do we promote it? How do we make sure that the teachers in the classroom understand what those experiences are so they can be doing them? So we've got that foundation to make the connection.
Shelley, this is
there's
Nick Pauls. I'd like to echo those sentiments. I'm currently working with Dr. King at the Department of Education on how computer science would look at a K through 12 level or even a pre-K through 12 level. And one of the biggest hurdles that we come across in implementation is professional development for teachers. Yes, we have access to curriculum. Yes, we have access to equipment and technical resources in the classroom. But when it comes to professional development of teachers, that's an area that we struggle with. And I know that he's currently working on a teaching endorsement for computer science, but that could take up to 2 years to push through. So in the meantime, we have to work with, and we have been working well with national partners like Microsoft Teals or Code.org, because they have built-in professional development products that can be pushed out to help supplement the curriculum. And on top of that, I'd also like to go to a point that I believe Natalie made earlier about IDing careers that were in high demand. I think as far as the Department of Labor goes, giving that information, it's fantastic for up-to-date information, but what we really need to do is reach out to those industry partners and not only find out what the opportunity is available right now, but what that might look like in the next 3-5 years or so, because the IT computer science industry changes so rapidly that a lot of the businesses that I've already reached out to have said, yeah, what we're hiring for now isn't going to reflect what we're hiring for in 3 years' time. The jobs are going to change. We already see where that change is moving, so we need to be focusing in that direction. So I think that is incredibly important too. And then the last thing I want to leave with is obviously we have to have diversity and equity in what we're doing here in providing these programs to students across the state. When we look at how the past few years have looked in Kansas, it's been pretty awful. We've had only 27% of high schools have had access to a computer science course of any kind. And if we look at AP courses, last year, there were only 4 Hispanic students in the entire state that took an AP course in computer science, and only 1 Black or African-American student that took an AP course. we've got to get rid of these disparities and make sure that we're working equitably with every school district and every community across the state to be providing this opportunity. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, thank you for that, Nick. So how to increase access to the courses for all students. And all means all, regardless of the region that they're in, regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, race, ethnicity, all of that. But I think in this case, we not only have that barrier of gender, racial, and economic that can cause students to be underserved, but regionally as well.
Sure. The only barrier or perceived barrier that should be of any value whatsoever is areas that are underserved by broadband. Outside of that, it should be equal equity.
Sorry. I made a note on that because that's definitely one of those things to come back to. Bill, I want to come back to this work that real world learning has been doing with Ksde and that list of credentials that they have. Is that something, I know you said you were going to do a little searching and see what you came up with. Would that be something that you could give us a little report out on at our October 11th meeting?
I'd be glad to do that. Yes. I
Hey,
would like to, if I could just add in, this is really good conversation associated with lower grade levels, helping students understand what positions are out there and what skill sets that they may have. It comes down to interest and aptitude, and there's been quite a bit of research done on that, and linking that interest and aptitude to motivation. But there's an education component to that for all of us to help, as somebody said earlier, teachers, educators become aware of the jobs that are out there and the skill set that goes with them, and then identifying students that can meet the, have the interest and the aptitude for that skill set. Kaufman has been doing a little bit of work with career exploration, and one of the tools that they are piloting is U-Science. And U-Science is interesting because it, some of the school districts, and I believe Shawnee Mission is one of them, have been using that, and there are several other districts that have piloted it as well. But it is an inventory that ascertains students' interests and their aptitudes, but then connects them with potential job and careers in the areas that we've been talking about. What I can tell you, I think I can tell you this, is that the collective results, although not public, has shown some pretty amazing things, and that is in areas of required aptitude for advanced manufacturing and for IT. The majority of students who took the U-Science assessment and scored highly in those areas were female. And those are two areas that historically females have shied away from or stayed away from or been kept out of. And so that there's tremendous opportunity for learning in this area and additional populating these high needs areas that we're talking about. So, but I will say one more thing and then I'll be quiet because I know I've been talking too much. The education process, the learning about careers, the concept of whoever I am, I can do this. I have an interest in this area, and I have an aptitude in this area, and teachers understanding the requirements for these kinds of positions and what they pay and all of those things. That is a learning process that occurs not in front of this work that we're doing here, but simultaneously. And so that's an important thing. If it occurs in front of, there's no context for students and educators to have an interest in finding out about it. But when parents learn about the job availability for their children and the training that's required, and students do the same thing, and simultaneously we have opportunities for those, that's I think the secret sauce.
Well said, Bill. As it was mentioned that, you know, as a new perhaps teacher licensure program that was coming along, which is great, but we can't wait 4 to 6 years for those teachers to go through the pipeline and get out into classes. B, they'll only see those kids in their programming. And so we're definitely talking about it's those generalists, it's the elementary teachers that really will begin to shape this, I think. And as they start becoming aware, they have to be able to do something with it. So I think you're dead on that this has to be simultaneously. We're increasing the programming and growing opportunities and taking down barriers so kids have access. And then as that happens, I think it just goes hand in hand that then we're talking about what we're doing, people see it, they can make that connection to their students to get them plugged into it. But thank you for explicitly bringing that to the forefront. I think it does have to be simultaneous. That how do we do both? Bill, that assessment that you said, did you say that was called youth science? I'm not catching exactly what you were saying. That
yes, it is youth science. Let me see if I can find the link.
if you had a link that you could drop in the chat box, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, I will put that in there now. And I've actually sent this link to family members who have adult children who haven't yet figured out what they want to do with themselves. And so their testimonials are, I can't say that it's made any significant progress in a career, but they've at least taken it and found value in it.
We have certainly found value in Shawnee Mission.
Great.
We may also want to make sure we hook up with these concepts with Higher Paths, Kristen Brighton. That's a lot of free marketing that we could get for the initiative.
Absolutely. And I have had some conversation with her. Yeah, so thank you for that. I'm just looking at so kind of some of these first steps that we have. Report from Bill, Natalie, getting Department of Labor to come and give us information. So I'm looking back at other things that we've talked about to see if there's anything else that you see that we can get the ball rolling with, or do these two things feed other decisions that will be coming?
Keith asked about Zello, and I don't know, the last September 14th, a presentation was given by 2 districts that just were recognized for IPS star recognition in regards to the individual plan of study. The two districts that were recognized and presented their IPS were Piper School District and DeSoto School District. And what's interesting about both of those school districts is they're both part of the Kaufman Initiative, and talking about career awareness at the elementary school, exploration at the middle school, and preparation at the high school. And DeSoto is also a work-based learning district. So I thought it was really interesting that both of those schools, in regards to Keith's comment in the chat, strong IPS in place for both of those, and also doing these other initiatives. So I think, Keith, yes, it very much ties into the IPS and how important it is to start those experiences early and to make sure that the demographics of the students participating in those are reflective of the school district and the region.
So Natalie, are you suggesting that we should do some follow-up with them, or are you simply responding to what I haven't had time to click on to see that was put in the chat box?
Keith put, what about Zello? How does this fit in? And I think it fits in remarkably well, because we've been working with Dr. Solberg, who's a national expert on the individual plan of study. And he's commented several times that you can evaluate the implementation of the individual plan of study by career success indicators, which could include college credits, high quality work-based learning, and IRCs. So I think it very much fits into, and I was just connecting the dots, two school districts that reported to the state board last week that receives star recognition, and their IPS are both connected to the Kaufman Initiative, Piper and DeSoto. DeSoto is a work-based learning district, and I think that I could put the link to their presentation in the chat, tying back to a lot of the things that we've talked about this morning.
So Natalie, do you think looking at their presentation, and actually that, I mean, maybe that's something we want to just, if it's recorded, we could just, I don't know how long it was, maybe we could jump to it live and actually just have a look at it right now.
I'll put it in the chat real quick.
Or if we'd want to invite them to give us a presentation on it. You've obviously heard it. What are your thoughts on what would be valuable for this group?
I could certainly put the link to the presentation in the chat. You know, it's up to you all whether you want to listen to it on your own time and then invite back, but they're two districts that completed the application for going above and beyond in their IPS initiative. And they happen to be part of the Kaufman Initiative, and DeSoto is a work-based learning school. So everything we've talked about this morning, I think I'll put it in the chat, and it's up to you whether you want to play it or if you want to invite them back. Either way, I think would be fine.
It's frustrating when you have too many screens open at once and then something minimizes on you and then you can't find your way back.
Kelly, while you're navigating that, and just throw some complicators in here from the early look through middle school of this work. So if you look at it, you've got to develop the interest before you can choose the career. I think Nick talked about that, right? We don't have enough people going in to the high school level pathways courses. Over the next several years, what's going to just really suck up the time from a training aspect of elementary teachers and a little bit on the middle school side will be literacy and mathematics training. I mean, it's just going to be a huge part of our initiative. We're pouring $15 million into a literacy project, and then we'll be turning around and doing something similar to math. So it's going to be hard to get that second grade teacher to focus on, well, what can I do around pathways relative to computer science, IT, or STEM in general, if you just thought about it like that. If you really want to accelerate, and this is also has with it a heavy burden of staffing, but the districts that right now seem to be very successful in this area, I'll use Goddard as an example, choose a curriculum that provides training for that. And then they offer in the elementary, they offer that as one of the elective, I don't know, Shelley, what we would call that, wheels or so you've got, you've got things like art, music, PE, and library, right? Where you pull out to give some, some time for those teachers to have planning. They create a STEM environment that they take every kid through, of which part of that is computer science. The downside of that is you got to have a teacher that's willing to do it. The upside is if you have a teacher willing to do it, licensure doesn't matter as much as you just need to be trained, and you have to have a curriculum sequence of whatever you're going to choose. I'm just trying to think of the fastest way you're going to get there. Right now, I think if you go ask the first grade teacher, he or she's going to tell you, wow, I'm just committed to 2 years of literacy training, and I'm going to be committed to 2 years of math training. I don't know when I'm going to even have time to learn what you want me to learn to deliver that.
Randy, to play devil's advocate a little bit though, with the math training coming, should that math be math in a vacuum, or is IT in many cases, and the data analytics, which is a foundational skill of that, is that not the perfect opportunity to create that application for that mathematics that the kids need in order to engage with the math at higher levels? Maybe we're missing an opportunity if we're seeing this as two completely separate components.
Oh, I think it is, Shelley. I think right now where I see much of that being taught, computational thinking is being taught in mathematics. Maybe the coding side or the thinking about it's being more taught on the science side. Not saying that's right or wrong, just kind of the landscape of what I see right now. Because there's, I think, better curriculum embedded on the science side than entirely on the math side, even though there's a ton of crossover, no doubt about it.
I would just say that the looking for those opportunities to embed that into the math curriculum, I think would be really helpful in terms of student engagement and in terms of getting it before the teachers, not as one more thing. We give them plenty of one more things. And Natalie, thank you for getting that YouTube video up. I see that is here now. Natalie, do you happen to remember about how long that is? I guess I could click on it and see.
I'm estimating 20 minutes.
Stop. Okay, don't click on it, then you get a Grammarly ad. So it's 7 minutes long. We have approximately that much time. Would the group want me to share it and we could watch it online, or we could kind of dismiss early and you could just click on the link yourself and take a look at it, and then we'd have that information before we come back together again? I'm not sure how well it would work, me showing it and streaming it back out to you as a screen share. Hearing silence and no opinion, so I think this is what we will do since we're kind of wrapping up toward the end of things here. I think we do have a couple of good next action steps. with both Bill and Natalie bringing some information back to us. Hopefully, Natalie can by our October 11th meeting. Let's do this. I want to remind you that our October 11th meeting is 10:30 to 12. I think we'll do the same format and we'll continue working on this. We'll obviously receive the reports that we have from Bill and Natalie, use that information then to continue to build some concrete steps of, okay, what comes next. Let's go ahead and dismiss from this meeting. Everybody can get offline, but what I'd like you to do is then click on that little 7-minute video that Natalie just sent us, so that you can see how they're using Zello and the individual plans of study. And then you can be thinking and make some notes for next time how we might be able to capitalize on that to promote IT careers. Clear as mud?
Sounds good.
All right, that's the plan. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It was nice to see some faces that we hadn't seen in a while over the summer as people were doing lots of other things. So thank you for your work on this. As I said, I think you can all access this document to look at it and study it more between now and our next meeting by clicking on that link that was in the agenda today. If for some reason you can't, just shoot me an email and I'll see what's going wrong with the technology that you're not able to do that. All right, thank you, everybody. Again, watch that video. So before, I'll give everybody a little bit of time here before I sign off and close out. So click on that YouTube video that Natalie just sent out in the chat and take a few minutes to watch that. Other than that, have a great day.
All right. Thank you. You too.